Today's hearing, yet another glaring example of the administration's culture of corruption, where nobody seems to take responsibility. Nobody's held accountable for these, quote, mistakes. And joining me now with reaction, two members of the Finance Committee who are on hand for that, well, pretty pathetic display of leadership earlier today. Ohio Senator Rob Portman and South Dakota Senator John Thune. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Appreciate you being here. Senator Portman, give us your take away from today.
Well, two things. One, clearly, we need more information because the IG told us that this was an audit, not an investigation, which means that he didn't ask the tough questions. He didn't subpoena folks. He didn't ask the Treasury Department or the White House what they knew when they knew it. So we got to do more, and that's why this investigation needs to proceed. It's a bipartisan investigation. It's appropriate that we dig into this. Second, Sean, this is just a classic example, and I think Benghazi is too, of, unfortunately, a troubling pattern in this administration of putting politics ahead of the public interest. Because what we learned today was that not only was this outrageous conduct of targeting American citizens something that, you know, we now are learning much more about, but also that they knew about this and yet didn't tell members of Congress who had specifically raised questions about it. I personally had sent a letter with Senator Hatch March 14th. They knew about it. This is 2012. And yet, a week after the response they give back to us, they get a full briefing. They don't bother to tell us. So this is why you heard from Senator Hatch where he said, look, this was, you know, not telling the truth. He said it was a lie by omission because they knew what was going on and yet they didn't tell the members of Congress who had requested information. This means, of course, that the American people didn't hear about it, and it means that the practice was not shut down as soon as it could have been.
Well, it's a pretty shocking development. Senator Thune, let me play for you. The Treasury IG says the top Washington officials, knew about this enemies list as early as June of 2011. Let me play this for you and get your reaction.
From May 2010 through May of 2012, a team of IRS specialists in Cincinnati, Ohio, referred to as the Determinations Unit, selected 298 cases for additional scrutiny. We found that the first time executives from Washington, D.C. became aware of the use of these criteria was June 2011.
We found that top executives in D.C. were aware of it. Now, two developments today, Senator Thune, or we learned that Jay Carney, who said nobody knew earlier, in fact, the president's lawyer, the president's chief of staff, knew earlier than what Jay Carney was telling us. Can you put all that together and piece that together for us, please?
Right. Well, one thing, Lois Lerner is taking the fifth, Sean, I think, as you mentioned, which would suggest there's an admission of guilt right there. But as Senator Portman pointed out, we got more non-answers than answers today. The two people who should know about this, Steve Miller and the former commissioner, Paul Schuman, who testified, by the way, in front of the House committee in March of 2012 that there wasn't any targeting, and then found out subsequently in May that there was, and then for months said nothing about it. And despite repeated requests for information in the form of letters that came from the committee. So if you look at the way this thing is played out, there was a lot of people involved who knew what was going on. I asked the question today about whether or not there were conversations with the Treasury Department. The Deputy Secretariat's being reported knew about this as early as June of 2012. Of course, it was an election year. You got to wonder about how the political schedule impacted this coming out. But the White House itself did know April 24th. At least that's what we were told, that the General Counsel at the White House was informed about this, and then it was conveyed to the Chief of Staff. And yet this wasn't announced until May 10th, when the bomb was dropped at the ABA convention by this Lois Lerner. So just lots of unanswered questions, Sean. That's why we need to have, I think, more hearings, more of an opportunity to get the facts out there in front of the American people.
Let me go back to Sunday, Senator Portman, and Dan Pfeiffer was on all these Sunday programs, and he actually used the statement, the law is irrelevant, and he's speaking on behalf of the White House. Let me play it and get your reaction.
And let me just ask all of you, because there was a statement made over the weekend by somebody from the White House that the law would be irrelevant. Do you believe that the law is irrelevant, or is it relevant to this?
I believe the law is always relevant, sir.
Right. Gentlemen?
I'm not sorry. I'm sure I understand your question.
Well, there was a statement made over the weekend that whether the laws were broken was irrelevant. I'm just asking, do you believe that the laws are relevant in this case?
I mean, I guess I would agree with
I think
the
answer,
Inspector General that people should not break the law.
I was shocked, Senator Thune, by your exchange there, because Dan Pfeiffer said it over the weekend.
Well, he did, and that was precisely the point I was getting at, Sean, is if there were laws broken, and the Inspector General did say that if they took confidential information and gave it to someone else, in this case ProPublica, that would be a violation of the law. And so is that relevant? I think the American people believe it's relevant. We certainly believe it's relevant, but it was hard to get the Deputy Commissioner and the former Commissioner to acknowledge that the law was relevant. The Inspector General didn't seem to have a problem with that.
Yeah. Hey, Sean,
all right, Senator Portman,
go ahead. I was on that Sunday show, and I actually followed Pfeiffer, and I was surprised by what he said as well. But giving him the benefit of the doubt, because I think what he meant to say, because he tried to clarify himself, was whether it's illegal or not, it was wrong. Giving him the benefit of the doubt on that. What he said to me was even more outrageous when he said that this is all about Republicans going after a political issue when they should be talking about policy. It's Republicans trying to distract the country. This is a real issue. And this is about American citizens who are mistreated. All of us want to see tax reform on the Republican side. We're the ones pushing for getting this budget under control. We have an agenda that's a policy agenda the president's not reaching out and working with us on. So this notion that somehow this is a political witch hunt by Republicans is just false. And what we're trying to do is stand up for the American people and our constituents, and we'll continue to do that.
Well, the issue is not in dispute. They've admitted to the idea that they have targeted Tea Party groups. It's a question of who knew, who approved it, how did this all get set up so it doesn't happen again to liberals, conservatives, Republicans, or Democrats. But senators, thank you both for being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.